Welcome back to Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom. I am Brendan Davis, your host, and this week our special guest is me, myself, and I again. While I am on the road in Zhengzhou this week, I have another short-ish solo show for you. I had 3 different guests who I was hoping to bring you from here, but we just couldn't make the scheduling work, so I will bring you those guests via Skype interviews another time. For this one, though, what I have for you is first a recap of some cool recent shows you might have missed, but that I think you should really check out and why. I will also give you some of the highlights, kind of a travelogue of my time here in Zhengzhou, which has been great. And lastly, some notes about upcoming shows, some things happening that are interesting, I think, for me, that relate to my adventure with this podcast, as well as some future plans for the podcast. And I will be back with 1 or maybe more regular episodes of the show next week. I might release 2 depending on some scheduling, speaking of that. But if you do like the solo jams, then off we go. And as is the rule with these, I keep them pretty unedited, and so barring some emergency, I'm just going to rock on through this. So in terms of the shows, the recent shows, since I did kind of a catch-up episode, was first we had Blake Stonebanks. Blake is a combination of being an old China hand, but in a form of a relatively young guy. He came here in the late 90s, but he has had some wide experiences. He had a lot to say about science fiction writing. We talked about the role of big data and AI advances and other tech in China, which is a world he's very familiar with. Plus, his wife is an amazing painter. I got to attend the opening of her current show, and I think that Blake discusses that a little bit. You can check out the Blake links in the show notes for more information, and I will also see if I can find a link specifically to her gallery show in Beijing. But it was really, really cool. I did a post on my personal Facebook. I'll see if I can port that over to the Big Fish Facebook site so you can check it out as well. But I took a bunch of photos, but they don't begin to do justice. But if you can't travel to Beijing, it's better than nothing. I also had Peter Levenda on. Peter is legendary in certain circles and gets a lot of attention for his work in topics that are usually more in the conspiracy theory vein. But Peter has U.S.-China business experience that dates back basically as far as anyone from the West. He was one of the very first guys over here back in the day, and many of his insights are unlike anything you've heard elsewhere. He's a fascinating guest. I am a fan of his work, and I've heard him interviewed many times as well, and so it was a real treat for me to get him on the show. Speaking of a real treat, I had Alan Paul. Alan is a writer, he's a musician, and when he came to China, which is the story we discuss in the podcast, he actually ended up forming a band which was called the Woody Allen Band. He had a Chinese partner named Woody, spelled not like the somewhat complicated writer-director of the similar name, but Woody, W-O-O-D-I-E, and then his name Alan with 1 L. And they were a blues rock band, and he became fairly successful with that group over here, and ended up writing a memoir of his time here called Big in China, which was the original intended episode name for this podcast, actually. When I started doing some research, I realized that name was taken and spoken for, but then I thought, well, I've got to get this guy on the show. He sounds fascinating. And that hunch was proven correct and then some, and we became, I think, pretty good internet pals in the time since as well. Alan also wrote One Way Out, which is the definitive biography of the Allman Brothers Band. He is really kind of the de facto biographer for them, and we have all kinds of strange and interesting overlaps with them as well, which was really fun to talk about a bit in the episode. One correction, if you heard that episode or if you go listen to it based on this, he is not from Boston, which is something I say in the intro. I don't know where that snuck in my head. I think I'd been joking with him about that before we recorded, because he is from the Northeast, and he's actually straight out of Maplewood, New Jersey, in fact. But there was this, it's sort of an inside joke with the show, that I had this run of people who all had a Boston connection, one way or the other, and it seemed like out of 6 episodes that maybe 5 people had some strong Boston connection, and I got my wires crossed. But Maplewood, Jersey represent. Alan Paul's your guy. Next up, we had Kevin Geiger. Kevin is a former Disney animator turned co-owner of a creative development company called Magic Dumpling here in China, and they've made a lot of noise in the greater world, not just in China as well. Kevin is a pioneering guy in the worlds of not only digital animation, but also in virtual reality. And if your interests overlap with either one of those areas, Kevin's episode is a don't miss. He also just featured a blog post on the Animation World News website, and he promotes our podcast episode there specifically and highlights the takeaway that, were in my words from the chat, but it's what we talked about, namely that China is changing, but that it won't change for you. Right? It won't change for you or me or anybody specifically. It's changing the way it wants to change. So if you want to work here or do business of any kind, you have to grow and adapt and change to the realities on the ground. It doesn't work the other way around, which makes sense as soon as I say it. But I think that, a lot of us, especially from countries or places where we've been fortunate to have kind of a legacy of leading certain conversations, it's a bit of a humbling position to be in, and it requires different eyes and ears and a different mindset to work. But it is worth the effort if this is something that you want to do. So I think it's a great talk. And Kevin has also there's a theme, becoming good virtual and practical pals with people from the show, which is a lot of fun for me, honestly. And again, these bonus episodes, I offer a little more of my, personal experience and insight in this, since it's as much about me as what the guests are doing on these. To that vein, I'm just catching my breath here. Not bored. We're going to leave that in. Enjoy. So lastly, though, and certainly not leastly, is Zach Cagle. Zach is a barbecue master who has set himself up here in Zhengzhou. He's actually got a lot of time here now. He is a fellow Atlanta expat, although, of course, I had 14 years in Los Angeles after leaving Atlanta before I came here. But he came here from Atlanta. We went to the same college, Georgia State University. He is a new fast friend of mine and a pretty great guy all around. I'm actually heading back to Zach's Barbecue not long after I post this episode. So if you happen to be listening within an hour or two of this going live, just know that I'm sitting at the bar eating some of the best barbecue on the damn planet right now. And if not, I ate it, shortly. And you can't enjoy it through me vicariously, but man, it's good. I have talked to people back in Beijing. It's about a 3-hour bullet train ride here. I would seriously consider, plus Zhengzhou is a pretty interesting place anyway. Historically, of course, has other things to recommend it than the expat barbecue restaurant. But I would absolutely consider doing kind of a day and a night trip to come down and see a few sites and to eat at Zach's and go back to Beijing. That's how good it is. So speaking of Zhengzhou, just a few little notes. I was fortunate for this business engagement that they put me in a very nice hotel, probably the best hotel down here, I understand. And I have no complaints about that. But I did wonder, where the hell was Jingle Bells coming from? And if you listen, can you hear it? During this during the time here, I've been hearing, and I'm pretty high up on this hotel, and I've been hearing Jingle Bells electronically, the Christmas song, and just electronic, but like a phone ringtone. And I thought the first time I heard it, the first day I was here, I thought, did somebody leave a phone, and it's just like they're not hearing an alarm, or did somebody leave their phone behind when they went out for the day, and that happens to be the ringtone for some reason. But I kept hearing it, and I kept hearing it, and kept hearing it, and I would hear then I would hear it go away, so I could tell it was traveling a little bit. I'm like, where is this coming from? And so I was doing a bit of a walkabout one day and heading over to the store, and I finally realized it's coming from these water trucks they use to spray down and clean the roads. For some reason, these big tanker trucks, these water trucks, they have Jingle Bells. Like, that's their warning music saying get out of the way or roll up your windows before the hoses might spray. Like if you're in an adjacent car, you get the hose of water sprayed into your window. So I have no idea how they made that choice, but I don't know. It's kind kind of heartwarming or something. It's pretty fun. And I'm on the 29th floor at this place, and I still hear it. When the trucks are down there, it's like it's in the room next door, which is crazy. Also, give a little shout out to what's become my home away from home. The Zhengzhou Zhongyuan Wanda Plaza has become my second home. They have a lot of food choices there, plus a Watson's and a Walmart, and it's only about the equivalent of a $1.50 DD ride each way. And so that's where I've been going and having dinner. It's weird to not be home and not being able to cook, because I've kind of gotten into this phase where I really like to cook, and I typically make my breakfast and my dinner, and I just only have lunch when I go to the office as far as eating out for the most part. But it's not practical. I'm in a nice room here, but it's not a kitchenette or anything. So anyway, I'm going to the mall and I'm finding like the four skewers for Tin Kwai place, which is awesome. And Tin Kwai, again, that's about $1.50 for people who are thinking in U.S. dollar terms. And I've also gotten to see a really good bit of the Hunan University of Agriculture and Technology campus. I've actually been doing an education project is what brought me here. And I have met this really great big group of students while I've been down here and talking about Western filmmaking and international filmmaking, and have just really had a blast. And so I'm looking forward to a return visit here, just all around top to bottom. Now, coming up when I get back to Beijing, there's a lot going on. Wow, I'm looking at a list here. So first of all is that I have a lot of really great guests confirmed for the show here. I just basically have to get home and get the scheduling locked down and start meeting up with people. And there's some that I'll do by Skype, but I really like to do them in person as much as possible. As much for the vibe, or more for the in-person communication vibe than even the technical, where I have like my fancy broadcast mic and stuff. But I'm really looking forward to that. Also, I am getting the that new podcast platform that I've kind of teased that Mike Stone is leading the charge on. We are getting that off the ground and off into the airwaves pretty soon. So I'll have some news about that relatively shortly, I think. Definitely within April, we'll have some updates on that. Also, I'm attending another fun EO event, Entrepreneurs Organization, that my friend John Dietz will be one of the guest speakers at in April. AJ and team were able to wrangle him to come and speak about the film business in China, and so I'm going to be there. I'm going to see if I can convince them to let me record that one and share it with you as well, because that would be great. Also, the inaugural Beijing Spicy Food Festival. I'm not sure if that's exactly the right name, but basically the hot and spicy food festival that Mike Wester and his team at the Beijinger and True Run Media are putting on. They're going to do a big 2-day event in April. It's kind of like their pizza fest or their craft beer fest. That's going to be awesome. And because of my association with this ultra hot and spicy food film called Crazy Hot that we're in post on, and hoping to be finished up with sometime before I'm qualify for Medicaid back in the U.S., hopefully pretty soon. Because of my association with that, I'm going to go and shoot some behind-the-scenes stuff and, eat the foods and drink the drinks and have fun and see if I can participate in a few ways. I also have a couple of media appearances in the can of various folks, a few podcasts, and a video show I was shot for an online show, and I'll keep people updated as those roll out. And it's funny, during this trip, I missed a few chances to appear on CGTN with my friends there at Culture Express talking about movie stuff. So I'm looking forward to doing some more of that when I get back, whenever it comes up. And lastly, in terms of everything that's not specific to the show, is that I've been producing and directing and also hosting a business video series with a consulting client of mine, and we're going to be rolling that out pretty soon as well. And I'll be appearing along with the client in what might end up being 100 videos before we're done. I have about the first dozen of those are in the edit process right now. But the biggest big fish in the Middle Kingdom news, and coming toward the end of this, is that I am working to finalize a live Big Fish in the Middle Kingdom event in Beijing for looking at either late May or early June, and it's timed to roughly the 1-year anniversary of the show. The show went live May 20th of last year, of 2017, in case you're aliens from the future race that finds this and discovers the archives. So I am looking to run a panel discussion with with a handful of guests, plus have different appearances from friends of the show, new and old, and also officially announcing a few new endeavors at that time. I'll have some updates with Mike about the podcast platform, possibly be involved in a few other podcasts myself. That's to be determined, but there's some things in the air. And then several of my friends have podcasts of their own. AJ Warner is now doing a business podcast that is on the Himalaya platform here in China, which is a really good show if you want a very business focused, China savvy show. AJ Warner's show is really good, and there's several other things that are in the works. So we'll talk about some of those things. But hopefully that live event, that will definitely be released as a podcast episode, and I will possibly live stream it as well. So stay tuned for more information if that interests you. I will say, again, this show doesn't get too political. If anything, I kind of feel free to bag on things I don't like from back home, but to be fair, I'm here, and that sort of discourse locally is not very welcome, of course. And the bottom line is that I'm here to do what I do, but it doesn't involve telling other people how to run their life or their country. And so I sort of tend to stay out of that. But the bottom line is that, in terms of being able to use my U.S. SIM card, and which doesn't require any kind of VPN or internet technology, I can actually access things unblocked. I don't have that anymore, and it's harder and harder to basically deal with the outside internet sometimes. Google and Gmail, all those things are blocked. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, those things are all blocked. And you can get workarounds. You can get officially approved VPNs if you are affiliated with the right company and whatnot. But it's getting a little more difficult to be plugged in on a daily basis to things. So for what it's worth, if you haven't already, please add me on WeChat. And WeChat is a free download. They don't need my help, pimping their platform. They do quite well. They will very shortly overtake Facebook, and then I think WhatsApp is still actually slightly bigger. But the bottom line is that WeChat is the dominant platform here, and it's a great way to do calls, video calls, chats, voice messages. The social interaction part of it is not... It's not geared toward random spew and back and forth conversations on threads, although that happens some. It's mostly for staying in touch with people you actually know. So if you want to add me on WeChat, that contact information is in the show notes and on my website. It's just my name all run together, Brendan Davis. But anyway, no worries. If you do WeChat me, I will get back to you as soon as I can. And look, thanks again for listening. That's all for this week. I appreciate it very much. I hope you will tell a friend or two or three, share an episode you like. That's really the best gift you could do, and that's the best gift you could give me in terms of getting the word out about the show and help it to spread organically. I have still done no actual paid promotion for the show for downloads, so this is spreading organically, and thanks to all the people who like it and listen. And I will see you next time.